All right, welcome back. Well, there is little doubt President Trump's second term has already led to major changes in D.C., at least when it comes to the landscape of many of the city's landmarks. Most notably, there's the demolition of the east wing of the White House to make way for a massive new ballroom. There's also adding President Trump's name to the Kennedy Center. And then there are the ideas the president wants to move forward with, like constructing a giant arch between the Lincoln Memorial and Arlington National Cemetery. A lot going on. And joining us now is Neil Flanagan, a D.C. historian and architect. Neil, you're the perfect person to talk to about this. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. And first, I know you've talked about this before. In fact, you've said there's a difference between declaring something and building something when it comes to the American legacy. What do you mean by that?
Well, fundamentally, Donald Trump is attempting to claim a lot of these sites for himself, and some of that is identifying it as an American legacy. But if it's not produced through a democratic process, ultimately it will not be accepted as part of the American legacy. And
in terms of what we're seeing, Neil, is the scope of this work typical for a modern presidency?
The scope of what Donald Trump is doing is completely unprecedented. It's particularly unprecedented in the way that it's very personal and the way that he's actually seems to be attempting to profit from it, as we see with the Haynes Point project.
And, you know, historically, as a historian yourself, if you could lay out the picture for us, is there any comparison to the changes that we've seen and the ones being proposed to previous presidents trying to leave their mark?
Yeah, so you can look at presidents, particularly maybe Theodore Roosevelt, Herbert Hoover, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Those presidents have also made major changes in D.C., right? So the National Mall, as we know it, really doesn't come about until the 1930s under the Roosevelt administration. But even then, Roosevelt, who thought himself as an architect, was very, very careful to never make it about his own personal brand.
So you're saying the branding there. Yes, continue, please.
So the branding there is really what's really exceptional, and also the sense that there are elements of ownership where Franklin Roosevelt didn't try to profit from any of the museums or structures here that were erected under his presidency.
And, you know, I want to talk a little bit about some of the legal challenges that we've seen in response to some of these efforts. Today, the update with East Potomac. Where is the line, in your view, between preservation and preservation efforts and reconstruction? You know, what traditionally, when you're looking at this, are some of the key sticking points courts are looking at when it comes to preservation, historic buildings, which we know we have plenty of in the district, or new additions in a place like D.C. that is so unique?
Right. So the trick is that there are different legislative authorities that govern different parts of D.C. So the White House was interesting with the demolition of the East Wing. Preservation was very, very light because that is specifically exempted from the National Historic Preservation Act. Other projects like the Arch or this Garden of American Heroes specifically come under that rule and have to be followed under the various, Administrative Procedures Act, National Environmental Protection, Historic Preservation. There's a whole thicket of stuff, plus something called the Commemorative Works Act. So those are actually more aggressive breaches of legislative authority than the White House, even though we might think of the White House as somehow more treasured.
Thank you for that specification there. And I want to get your description now. You mentioned the arch, this proposed arch. From your architectural perspective, can you just walk us through the size and the scope of this? I think most of us have seen maybe an explainer video or the renderings of this, but can you tell us, describe for us what this is actually going to look like?
Well, it's a 19-story building, right? So that's start there. And that's at 250 feet to the top of the statue. So it's a 190-foot tall arch, and then the 60-foot tall statue, 250 feet. That is basically twice what you can build in D.C. It's twice as tall as any building in D.C. And under the Hyde Act that D.C. is famous for. And then it's going to be this monumental stone structure. I think it's very difficult for people to understand how much bigger it's going to be, even if they've been to Paris and see the Arc de Triomphe. It's almost twice as big as that. And I think it's an interesting project because where its location is very strange. It's going to be very strange to access physically, and it's going to dominate this very important symbolic axis that was meant to represent the reunion of North and South between the Custis Lee Mansion and, of course, the Lincoln Memorial.
Lastly, Neil, what precedent do these proposals set, and what, in your view, will their impact be 10, 20, 30 years from now?
Well, I think there's a lot in the air because I think some of these projects face major technical challenges. I think something that has not been discussed much with the arch is the soil conditions. So as an architect, I look at that and I think they are going to be spending a lot of money to build a foundation there to support a structure of that size and that weight. And same with the Garden of American Heroes, it faces major technical challenges in addition to any kind of legal challenges it could face. So I think this may be more half built by the time by the time the kind of clock runs out, depending on how political winds shift. I think that if they're kept, I mean, I don't see much reason for the Democratic Party to try to preserve or continue these projects. I think they'll be hated, and we see they're not popular because I don't think people feel that even people who voted for him feel this is responsive to their needs.
Well, last thing, Neil, people should remember about the unique D.C. landscape when it comes to the discussion around some of these proposals.
Well, I think DC is tricky because, of course, it is a place where we live, right? And then it's also a symbolic capital of the United States, and that's always been a very delicate balance. And part of that is that this idea has been that the government is representative of the people and trusts the people. So when it's deployed in a very personal way, that feels like a particular overreach of this understanding between the residents and the American people.
Neil Flanagan, D.C. historian and architect, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and walk us through some of these efforts here this afternoon.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Take care and stay with us. We'll be right back after this quick break.